gives rise to many conspiracy theories. Books like the Da Vinci Code suggest the Templars blackmailed the Vatican, demanding special privileges in return for suppressing the bloodline of Jesus. But most scholars simply ascribe their sudden success to good connections. Evidence of their financial clout and influence still stands today.
The Templars were openly involved in financing and constructing most of the major Gothic cathedrals of the 12th and 13th centuries. They almost certainly financed the entire building of Chartres Cathedral. Financially, it would have been the equivalent of the American moonshot back in the late 60s.
One of the finest Templar churches stands in the heart of London. Called the London Temple, it displays the Templar seal, two men riding a single horse. Unlike most medieval churches, this one is round.
Such a church was designed to recreate the sanctity of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, the destination of every pilgrim, the most sacred place on earth, and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is round.
This wasn't just a church, it was a treasury.
The King of England came here to the London Temple and removed £50,000 sterling in 1307. It was like walking into Fort Knox and taking off with the gold. Huge resources were being managed and administered, apparently honestly and effectively, by the Templars.
Throughout Europe, the cash-rich Templars begin to lend money to cash-strapped nobles. The Templars had an edge over other Christian lenders. They could charge interest.
In Europe in the Middle Ages, very few people were allowed to transact with money because it was supposedly a sin, simony and usury, to lend money at an interest.
The Templars may have created the idea of the check and the line of credit. Pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land or other places would deposit money in a local Templar treasury. In return, a receipt showing the amount deposited.
You would finally make it to your destination. You would then cash in what amounts to a medieval traveler's check concept. This was like an early letter of credit.
Convenient, but costly. The Templars charged up to 10% for this service. The Templars vowed themselves to a life of poverty, but that didn't seem to affect their bottom line. How did the Templars reconcile their worldly riches with their beliefs?
The individual knights took vows of poverty, so they themselves did not own property. They themselves were not wealthy, but the order was allowed to hold that money in order to conduct its own businesses.
By the late 1200s, the Knights Templar are one of the richest and most powerful organizations in Europe. But envy and anger follow them, and a ruthless plot is set in motion.
You won't see it. You won't feel it. You won't know you've been scammed until it's too late. We reveal just how the world's best scammers steal your stuff. Connor Woodman, our man undercover, freezes the action and chases the bad guys from Rio to Rome. See him go through tourist hell so you don't have to. Scam City, Tuesdays at 8 on Nat Geo HD. They're sexy, powerful, and extremely fast. These cars are a cut above the rest, and it's time to check out why.
This is a race car with number plate.
Join us on a journey to discover where these dream cars are created Enjoy the ride. Mega Factory Supercars, Wednesdays at 8 on Nat Geo HD.
The Knights Templar is one of the most powerful organizations in Europe. But there's trouble ahead. The Crusades made the Knights Templar, and the Crusades are about to destroy the Knights Templar. Muslim armies converge on the Holy Land. After 2 centuries of warfare, Muslims are newly united under the Egyptian sultans. Support for the Crusades dwindles back in Europe.
The Crusades, over a period of time, became more expensive and in both life and resources for Europe, and began to look less and less like the kind of thing that would work in the long run.
Muslims crushed the Crusaders at the battles of Jaffa, Al-Mansura, and the siege of Safed. By 1290, the Templars hold only one castle in the Holy Land. At the siege of Acre, they lose that one too. The Holy Land is again occupied by Muslims. The Templars retreat to the island of Cyprus.
After the fall of Acre in 1291, you have a serious disillusionment with the idea of the Crusades, as the common populace saw the resources of Europe and the resources of the military going towards these holy wars that seemed to be futile. The role of the Templar seemed to be less tenable.
The Order's fate lies with a new leader, the French nobleman Jacques de Molay. He lobbies for a new crusade launched from Cyprus, but to no avail. 1307, de Molay arrives at the Paris headquarters of the Knights Templar.
He was asked to come to France by Pope Clement V in order to reassess their finances and in order to discuss their future endeavors. And it just happened that he showed up in France at a time when Philip IV, Philip the Fair, was experiencing a great deal of economic hardship.
Philip is known as the Fair for his handsome looks, but he's accumulated huge debts. His wars with England have put France in hock. His biggest creditor is none other than the Knights Templar.
Guy?
Philip decides to wipe out his loans with one stroke.
Yes, my lord.
Arrest the Templars and seize their money.
Bring them to the dungeons on the Louvre.
The king concocted a group of charges and
Make haste!
accused the Templars of the most vile forms of heresy known to the medieval mind.
Friday, the 13th of October, 1307. Some believe the modern superstition of Friday the 13th hails from this date. In just one day, Jacques de Molay and hundreds of French Templars are rounded up.
Jacques de Molay, by the order of the king, you are under arrest.
By what charge?
Heresy.
The arrests shock Europe.
Today, it might be as though we all woke up one morning, turned on the television, and heard that every single executive of every bank or corporation had been suddenly rounded up at dawn. I mean, it was of that magnitude.
The investigation of the accused begins in the usual way. Torture isn't the penalty for crime. It's a tool to extract a confession. The most common form of torture was the rack. A rack was simply 3 triangulated boards with a rope attached to a winch, and the idea was to dislocate the wrists and the ankles. In Paris alone, over 100 Templars are tortured, including their elderly Grand Master, Jacques de Molay.
I confess my sin of heresy!
There were 127 accusations levied against the Knights Templar. They included everything from denying Christ, spitting on the crucifix, defecating on the host, waving their bottoms at the Eucharist, kissing each other on the bottoms during their initiation rites.
Hundreds of Templars confess, including the Grand Master. But the confessions go beyond the original charges, moving from the odd to the bizarre. Night after night confesses to strange religious practices, including the worship of an unusual object.
There are a lot of suggestions that this was, in fact, the skull of John the Baptist. Others have suggested that the severed head on the silver platter is, in fact, the Holy Grail.
The stories get stranger as Templars independently tell similar bizarre stories. Several Templars confess to worshipping the Baphomet, or Baphomet.
The Baphomet is probably one of the most spectacular aspects of the accusations against the Templars. Some have suggested that this is a stone idol of the devil, which was one of the most sensational aspects of their trial, trying to link them in some way with demon worship.
Other theories abound.
There are some scholars who suggest that Baphomet is actually a mistranslation of Muhammad, that the Templars were actually combining a number of different religious traditions in their own practice.
Thousands of Templars served for many years in the Holy Land. Some may have secretly absorbed religious beliefs from the Muslims, like reverence for the Prophet Muhammad, or Baphomet. The strange term still mystifies historians. In the early 1980s, a scholar named Hugh Schoenfield made a startling claim. Baphomet is a coded message.
Dr. Hugh Schoenfield is a famous Dead Sea scholar, has worked on this issue about the word Baphomet using the Atbash cipher from biblical studies.
The Atbash cipher was an ancient Hebrew encoding technique in use since at least 500 BCE. When the Atbash cipher is applied to Baphomet, a new word emerges. Sophia, Greek for wisdom. To venerate wisdom isn't heresy unless the wisdom itself is heretical. Sophia is the ancient Greek name for a goddess worshipped by an early Christian sect, the Gnostics. Sophia appears in several Gnostic Gospels as the creator of the world, a figure greater even than Jesus. But the Gnostic beliefs are deemed heretical, and their Gospels are banned by the Church. Some scholars suggest the Templars discovered these Gospels and resurrected a lost form of Christianity. Was Baphomet code for goddess worship? Here, two theories converge. Some Gnostic Gospels say the goddess Sophia came to earth in the body of Mary Magdalene. Under the royal blood theory, Mary Magdalene carried the bloodline of Jesus. She became the vessel of holy blood, the Grail itself. In their written charter, the Templars dedicate themselves not to Jesus, but to Mary.
The question that has often come up is, who was the Mary? Was it the Blessed Virgin Mary, meaning the Mother of God? Or was it, in fact, Saint Mary Magdalene?
If the Templars worshipped Mary Magdalene as equal to Jesus, it's one of the worst kinds of heresy. The question still lingers. The Templar Charter is dedicated to Mary, but doesn't say which one, or whether she was worshipped as a goddess.
Again, there are unanswered questions, yes, but there isn't yet any documentable evidence that the Knights Templar worshipped Mary Magdalene. It's just not there.
Under torture, the Templars may have confessed to practicing a heretical goddess religion, worshipping an idol, or even worshipping a human head. More likely, the Templars were innocent scapegoats for a king who decided to wipe away his debts. King Philip demands the heretics face justice.
I have here numerous eyewitness accounts of acts of heresy in name and deed.
Reluctantly, the Pope agrees. In 1314, the Knights Templar are officially disbanded. March 18, 1314. After 7 years of imprisonment and torture, Grand Master Jacques de Molay is executed as an unrepentant heretic. With his dying breath, it is said de Molay put a curse on the Pope and the King.
In a year, I shall see you both in a tribunal before God.
Within a year, both are dead. After 200 years, the Templars are no more. Their castles are taken, and their great wealth mysteriously disappears.
The Templar treasure that King Philip le Bel had seen with his own eyes, by the time his men got there to take possession of it, it had vanished.
Nobody knows what happened to the wealth of the Templars after they were suppressed. It has been suggested that 2 great carts of treasure were carted out of Paris right before the final arrest on Friday the 13th.
And from that point onwards, the Templars vanished from the record.
We know that the Templars survived, or at least that some Templars survived. They had adequate warning, every place but France. And even in France, we know that some Templars escaped.
One theory claims a few Templars slipped out of Paris with their treasure. To this day, its whereabouts remain unknown, but a clue survives. This is Rosslyn Chapel near Edinburgh, Scotland. In the thriller The Da Vinci Code, the chapel appears as one of the key clues to the hiding place of the Holy Grail. A medieval church and a lost treasure may be linked by one man.
Rosslyn Chapel, this magnificent building, was built in 1446 by William Sinclair.
Sir William Sinclair is an enigmatic figure. Though he built the chapel almost 150 years after the Templars were officially disbanded, it has a tremendous amount of Templar symbolism. 2 riders on a single horse is a symbol of the Templars. It appears in Rosslyn. As does the Templar seal, the Lamb of God holding a cross. Throughout the chapel, mysterious engravings, symbols, signs, faces.
Encoded very cleverly within its